It would probably surprise you to know that I don't consider myself a body positive creator. I think it's completely unrealistic to think that we can feel positive about our bodies all of the time. I have struggled with EDs and body dysmorphia and a massive complicated relationship with food and my body the whole way through my life. And there was no way in hell I was going to go from that to this self-acceptance and self-love and body positivity overnight. I think people see my videos and think I must have a load of confidence because I dress in the same way that slimmer creators dressed, and for some reason that is not expected of somebody in a larger body, and we must be super confident or like brave in order to do that because we're not supposed to wear the regular clothes, we're expected to cover up. So it seems the default assumption that because I do wear clothes that people in other body shapes wear, that I must be super confident in order to do that. But that's completely not true. I heard of body neutrality a couple of years ago and it really resonated with me, and I knew straight away that was the direction I wanted to go in. The way I was brought up, I was raised on a farm and we didn't really do any of like hair and nails. We didn't subscribe to any beauty standards. I wasn't really aware of them. I was barely aware of my own gender when I was growing up because my mum would say she raised me as a boy, but basically I was brought up in a very gender neutral environment and I often wore what would be considered very boyish clothes. We just didn't bother with any of that, and that was really normal for me. But then obviously going into school, seeing the wider society, watching the really problematic TV programs that were on in the late 90s and early 2000s, that very quickly made me feel super conscious about my body. So when I heard of this body neutrality, I thought that sounds exactly how I was supposed to feel when I was younger. That my body doesn't really say anything about me, it's just my body and a tool that I use to live my life. So the definition of body neutrality is the act of taking a neutral stance towards your body, both emotionally and physically. This means not supporting hatred towards your body's limitations or investing time and energy into loving it either. You can simply be at peace with your body. I'm actually quite surprised to read that definition because I've never seen it phrased in that way before, and like not investing time in loving your body seems quite jarring initially, but it also makes sense to me. It's not something that I invest time in really, and I also don't engage with hatred of my body as well, and that isn't something that happened overnight. It was a learnt skill that happened over a very long period of time. They use the word simply in that definition and it's certainly not simple. For me, body hatred is here and body positivity is here, but body neutrality is somewhere in the middle. And it seemed like a much shorter jump to go from body hatred to body neutral instead of like body hatred to body positive. That just seemed impossible. When you've got a poor relationship with your body, one of the most difficult things is dealing with those negative intrusive thoughts that come in. I liked how in the definition it said not supporting hate towards your body, and that makes total sense. The way I deal with it is I don't indulge in body hatred. So what I mean by that is everybody gets these thoughts that come through their head, passing intrusive negative thoughts about our bodies, and what I used to do in the past was double down on those thoughts. So if I was thinking about my stomach, then I would tell myself that I was disgusting and I need to sort myself out, and just like come in with all these really toxic negative thoughts that piled on top of each other. And I would also like poke and prod myself and pose in different angles in the mirror to try and shrink different parts of my body, and I'd engage in this like body shaming on myself, which we know is not helpful. There are loads of studies out there that show that body shame and trying to shame ourselves out of doing something or out of different behaviours or blatant fat shaming isn't actually helpful in any way. But I thought that I needed it. I thought I needed to be shamed and needed to be punished, so I indulged in it. And what I do now is I don't allow that. Because I used to be a teacher, I literally left my job like a year ago tomorrow, which is crazy. I think about how I would intervene with a bully. If somebody was bullying another child, what would I say to them? And I kind of do that in my own head. That's really unkind. You're not allowed to say that to other people. It's not okay for you to make mean comments about other people's bodies. That kind of stuff. When you're teaching, if somebody is distressing another kid, you're like, if you continue to make those kind of comments about so-and-so, then I will have to remove you from the situation. And that's kind of what I do in a weird way. I know it's my own brain and this must seem completely crazy, but I basically like cut off those thoughts. I'm like, no, we're not going to think about this anymore. I'm going to move on and we're going to do something else. I kind of imagine this internal negative voice as a person, and I imagine shutting them down. Sometimes it's helpful to kind of figure out where these negative thoughts are coming from, whether something triggered it early on in the day, which sometimes does happen with me. If it's like a social occasion that I'm worried about what I'm going to wear or what I'm going to eat in front of other people, then that can sometimes trigger it. So it can be helpful to try and figure out where it's come from. But when I feel those negative thoughts spiraling out of control, shutting it down has been the most effective thing for me. And just blatantly not allowing myself to like poke and prod and pose and spend and invest time in body hatred. I also acknowledge that I'm having a bad body image day and that is totally normal, and that loads of people have bad body image days all of the time. I had way more bad body image days when I was in a thinner body, strangely enough, but that was because I was deep in a load of negative behaviours and trying to meet a beauty standard. But acknowledging that I'm having a bad body image day doesn't mean necessarily that I have to cover up and that I have to hide myself or not do the things that I want to do. I actually tend to just acknowledge that I'm having a bad body image day and then continue to do the things regardless. And I often feel if I look back on the event that I was doing or the activity or the thing that I wanted to wear, then it isn't as bad as it felt initially in the moment. So this kind of came out on a podcast that I was on the other day, but I have a bit of a unique way of dealing with body neutrality and it is because of the background of growing up on a farm and being around a lot of animals. I kind of rationalize it by thinking, would I say these kind of things about an animal? Does anybody say these kind of things about an animal? If an animal has a bit of extra body fat, we tend to think that they're healthy. If they're like really thin and their ribs are showing, we tend to be worried about them. We don't hold our dogs or our cats or cows and pigs and horses to any random beauty standards based on the shape of their body or the way it looks. And go out to a field and look at a load of cows. I walk past a field of cows most days and they're all different shapes and sizes. And that's such a good reminder that within our society we have made up this whole bunch of beauty standards that we're trying to hold ourselves to that actually mean nothing at all. And I know it's a really weird way of thinking about it, but that's something that really helps me, and I wonder if it might help you, especially if you've got a cat or a dog or something that you can look at to remind yourself that you don't value that animal by the way its body looks. That would be really ridiculous. So why do we hold ourselves to the same weird standard? I mean, I know the answer to that. It's like a series of beauty standards that have been perpetuated throughout time, even from the early 1900s. And sure, cows haven't had magazines and corporations targeting us for our insecurities for years and years, but it almost highlights that even more. Our bodies, like animals' bodies, are just supposed to do their thing and change throughout life and protect us, develop in lots of different ways, and that's totally normal. And it's so unrealistic to think that our bodies should stay the same way the whole way through our lives. Like, we definitely wouldn't think that of a sheep. Sometimes just acknowledging the kind of pressure that's been put on us, like the Barbie movie that like actively calls out a lot of the pressures that are put on women.
Like, you have to be thin but not too thin, and you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin.
If we do that with body image and beauty standards and just see that even within the fitness industry, the epitome of fitness is not actually the epitome of fitness. They are fitness models and bodybuilders, people that are slapped on the cover of magazines because they look fit. They aren't necessarily fit. And there are a load of Olympic athletes that look completely different to them. Loads of different segments of society have these really rigid beauty standards, and the more we see that, the more we can free ourselves from these impossible standards that we're holding ourselves to. The other day I was going through some of the TV shows that we used to watch in the 90s that had a really significant negative impact on my body image and how I feel about my body. Let me know in the comments below what the worst ones were for you. I can certainly think of a few of them. Over in the UK, we have Trinny and Susanna who used to say absolutely horrific things about people's bodies. I know in the US there was like America's Next Top Model, which has been pretty famous for doing some really bad stuff.
Are we shooting for the large size category?
Yes, Robin would represent a plus size model.
Because I think next America's Top Model is not a plus size model. I'm sorry.
Let me know if there's any others. There's definitely movies like Bridget Jones when she was literally like a size 12 UK and they were calling her fat. And I think us millennials have been so significantly affected by it because there was so much of that around in the early 2000s and like the late 90s. Now, I think it's really important to remember that this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. One thing that I find really helps me and has helped me work through my individual issues is journaling. As you can see, I've got like so many of them. And it doesn't have to be a structured kind of journaling. You can literally just brain dump. And this can help with like identifying triggers. You can write down affirmations like, I am more than what my body looks like. I deserve to eat no matter how I feel about my body today. I deserve to wear and do what I want no matter how I feel about my body today. Just start by writing down how you're feeling and just see what flows out. You can also look at the different behaviors or things that you're stopping yourself from wearing or doing because of how you feel about your body. Like for me, I've started doing handstands recently in the gym with my partner, and because I've gained like quite a significant amount of weight in ED recovery over the last few years, I was really nervous going upside down when I wasn't near a wall because I thought I would be too heavy for him, and I thought that it would just be much harder. But I was pleasantly surprised. He handled it completely fine. He can hold me up, no issue. I mean, he's really strong anyway, but my concerns were not valid. And also, I don't feel like it was much harder than it was when I was in a smaller body, which is really weird. And then I was also holding myself back from going climbing and also from running and like a few different things that I thought because I'm in a larger body, I'd find it difficult to do. I know a lot of us are guilty of thinking that we need to wait until we're thinner in order to try new things or do new sports, or wait until we have like an amazing ability level at something before we even start, which is crazy. Writing all of those things down can be helpful because we can start taking action on those things, figuring out what they are, and the more we prove ourselves wrong, the better we feel about ourselves. When I was a teacher, I taught teenagers, and one of the biggest things that I'm really worried about for the future generations is the stuff we're seeing on social media and the impact that that's going to have on them. There's a lot of extreme body image trends. A while back, I did an experiment making a new TikTok account, and it automatically assumed that I was like a 13-year-old girl, and the stuff that it was sending me was really problematic. Like a lot of full day of eating as a model, and they were all like super skinny, and it was definitely like disordered eating behavior. There was stuff like the headphone challenge, the A4 challenge, just basically trying to make sure your waist is as small as possible, taking the hot girl walk trend like way too far and going on massive treks in order to burn loads of calories and get in thousands and thousands of steps, all in pursuit of a body image. And although I think we can assume that social media doesn't have much of a negative impact because we're just scrolling through and watching videos that are like 12 seconds to 1 minute long, that they're not going to impact us. But actually, seeing the same type of body over and over again, some of the biggest influencers pages, both in fitness and just like regular influencers, fit a very rigid body type. And of course, a load of them are edited or posed in a certain way to make them look like that. If you're seeing body after body that reinforces that beauty standard, and you're also seeing it from brands and magazines and literally everywhere, it's going to affect how you feel about yourself. One of the biggest things that I did for my feed is I started following loads of other creators in different sized bodies and of different ability levels. I was following a load of CrossFitters, and I just really diversified my feed. And I did used to find that people in smaller bodies, seeing their content a lot was triggering for me, and I had to unfollow a lot of people that were like perpetuating a beauty standard by doing body checks before a full day of eating, or just saying like, this is how you get abs, or basically if you train like me you'll look like me kind of content. But then there were other accounts that were in smaller bodies, and because I've got that ED brain, I would compare myself to those people. But since I started to fill my feed with more varied sized bodies, those people that are thinner or in a smaller body can still come up. But because there's so many other different body types in my feed now, I don't notice that it makes me feel as negative as it did before. You've probably been told a million times to unfollow all the people that make you feel negatively, but I think that doesn't help unless we kind of fill it in with something that's going to make us feel positive. So follow those accounts that are being real about it. And I don't mean just the ones that are bending over to show a bit of like skin rolls on their stomach. I mean, follow actual fat people, follow mid-sized people and plus-sized people, follow people that are short and tall and from different races and cultures and different genders, and with people that have different amounts of body hair and skin types and skin conditions. If you make your feed look like a representation of the world and of normal bodies, normal people, and all bodies are normal, but If you're curating your feed at the moment to make it look like you've got this one body type, that isn't a representation of normal bodies, because normal bodies come in all different shapes and sizes, and if you're just seeing that 1% of normal bodies, that's not going to be helpful. We need like the broad range, and that's why like representation in media is so important as well, because if we see ourselves in the media, then we believe in ourselves and we don't pull our bodies apart so much. We can see our bodies in different types of clothing. It's so impactful for a reason. If you'd like to hear a more in-depth story about my background with my relationship with food, then watch this video next. I hope you found this video helpful. There will be some ebooks coming out soon that will help you with your body image through the holidays and into the new year. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!